Everybody calls me Nice Pool. Oh my goodness, wait till you see Lady Pool. She is gorgeous.
Justin Baldoni suing the New York Times.
The It Ends With Us drama is back and headed to court.
We take it very, very seriously.
For an article reporting Blake Lively's claims that he directed a smear campaign against her during the press campaign.
The whole Me Too movement is so by women like Blake Lively.
After a tense press tour for the blockbuster earlier this year,
I think Blake Lively's ready to direct. That's what I think. So, yeah.
She is not who people think she is. And she wants the rights to It Starts With Us. And that's why she started this whole thing. I can guarantee it.
When Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds first revealed their romance, they seemed inseparable for life. Yet beneath the adorable couple photos and viral tweets, rumors began to swirl about tensions behind the scenes. The once perfect facade, so admired by millions, started showing signs of cracks. No one was quite sure who to believe. But now,
She was in control, she was in power, and she took over this film.
with lawsuits flying, heated words exchanged, and stories shifting daily, it's nearly impossible to tell hero from villain. Welcome to the whirlwind world of Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, where nothing is as it first seems, and where the real drama is just starting.
Blake Lively will be sued. Ryan Reynolds, for sure. Blake Lively was no victim here.
To unfold. For a long time, the power couple dominated the headlines with stories of mutual support and light-hearted mischief. They appeared at glamorous award shows in color-coordinated outfits, charming fans with their easy smiles and impromptu jokes. Hollywood, always hungry for its next chapter of gossip, placed them on a pedestal. But everything changed when Blake Lively dropped a legal bombshell aimed squarely at Justin Baldoni, the director of the film It Ends With Us. Overnight, the actress known for her charming persona and comedic flair revealed she was taking a stand, presenting herself as someone forced to endure harassment and a vicious smear campaign. Audiences were stunned.
She just had a baby too, and can't even tell. I don't think you're supposed to say that.
After all, Baldoni had already earned a following as an advocate for positive masculinity and social change. How could such a man find himself at the center of sexual harassment allegations? The tension was palpable, and it raised the stakes for everyone involved. When the story first broke, many were quick to side with Blake, seeing her as a courageous figure stepping forward to call out wrongdoing. Yet almost immediately, dissenting whispers from crew members on set began to surface.
That's okay. I identify as a feminist.
Indicating that Blake might not be the innocent party she claimed to be. Word of her controlling behavior on set circulated, and some claimed she had overshadowed the entire production. In the realm of Hollywood whispers, allegations of vanity and domineering attitudes are far from rare, but what made these rumors particularly potent was Blake's image as a sweetheart. Someone who championed the underdog, stood up for women's issues, and used her platform.
Lively's dominated the media. What they did was they worked with the New York Times.
For good. Could that champion be the same individual rumored to have pushed aside colleagues and co-stars, all to maintain a picture-perfect image? The immediate question turned to whether the lawsuit was a genuine pursuit of justice or a strategic move in a bigger game. People pointed to the suspicious timing. The legal filing came not long after Blake faced some negative press related to the filming of It Ends With Us. When the film's marketing first ramped up, many fans assumed the promotional campaign would focus on the sensitive topic at the movie's core, domestic abuse. After all, the original novel by Colleen Hoover had resonated deeply with audiences.
They shared illegally obtained text messages
For its exploration of complicated relationships and survival stories. Yet in practice, interviews with Blake often pivoted away from the film's emotional themes. Instead, attention centered around her wardrobe choices, her hair care line, or anecdotal quips about her husband, Ryan Reynolds. Meanwhile, Baldoni, an advocate for mindful conversations about masculinity, had hoped the movie would open up dialogues about the realities of domestic violence. This divergence in priorities sowed the seeds of suspicion about the motives behind Blake's approach to the project. In the midst of all this swirling tension, Justin Baldoni made it clear
Her publicist worked directly with the New York Times.
he wasn't about to roll over. According to his account, the allegations of sexual harassment and attempts to harm Blake's reputation were entirely fabricated, designed to shift public sentiment in her favor. Baldoni's frustration stemmed not only from the accusations themselves, but from the pervasive sense that powerful
They shared those together. They concocted a complaint that they filed with the Civil Rights Division.
Hollywood forces were lining up behind Blake. After all, she was the star with the brand endorsements, the undeniable star power, and a supportive spouse with an influential voice. If her narrative was the one echoing across the press, how could Baldoni possibly level the playing field? For him, calling out the alleged manipulation became a personal crusade, compelling him to push back, both legally and publicly, against what he saw as a masterfully orchestrated PR strategy. Ryan Reynolds' involvement heightened the intrigue. Known for his witty remarks and a knack for comedic timing, Reynolds seldom holds back when it comes to defending his loved ones. Initially, his support for Blake seemed like a standard gesture of solidarity any spouse might show. But as more details emerged, the conflict took on a sharper edge. Sources close to the situation suggested that Reynolds confronted Baldoni with accusations of body-shaming Blake, an assertion Baldoni vigorously denied. The spat became personal, with whispers of an explosive encounter in which Ryan demanded an apology that Baldoni refused to give. Given Reynolds' formidable public persona and loyal following, Baldoni found himself in an even more precarious spot. Yet for those paying attention, the most surprising development wasn't the heated exchange. It was the suggestion that Reynolds might have used his creative influence on his own projects to mock Baldoni. A certain deleted scene from a Deadpool crossover had fans doing a double take. It featured an alternate version of Deadpool, sporting a man bun and tossing out feminist one-liners, a comedic caricature widely interpreted as poking fun at Baldoni. The speculation went wild. Was Ryan weaving real-life drama into the cinematic universe of his beloved character to get back at the director who had wronged Blake? It sounded like the stuff of fanfiction, yet Baldoni and his supporters insisted it was a pointed jab. The possibility that the feud had crossed over into one of the biggest Meanwhile, the allegations that Blake and Ryan had worked with the media to skew coverage of the fiasco added another layer of tension. Baldoni claimed that certain text messages had been misrepresented or selectively edited in an article published by the New York Times, painting him in the worst possible light. Baldoni's attorney, Brian Friedman, pointed out that essential context, like emojis indicating the texts were tongue-in-cheek, had been systematically omitted. To Friedman, this was a clear sign that the power couple, along with a willing media outlet, were crafting a one-sided narrative designed to protect Blake's image at all costs. Of course, the New York Times defended its reporting, claiming it had reviewed countless documents in a comprehensive journalistic effort. But Friedman remained adamant that the supposedly complete reporting was deeply flawed and intentionally skewed. The tension between Baldoni and the New York Times eventually escalated into a multi-hundred-million-dollar lawsuit. Baldoni's team believed this wasn't just about clearing his name. It was also about exposing the high-level machinations that can occur when two Hollywood titans join forces to shape public perception. For a director whose reputation was built on positivity and constructive dialogue, the sudden shift into legal battles and mudslinging felt deeply incongruous. Yet Baldoni insisted he had no choice if he wanted to stand up against what he perceived as a well-financed Goliath. Friedman, too, zeroed in on the alleged collusion between Blake, Ryan, and the media, interpreting it as emblematic of the power imbalance that can make or break reputations in Hollywood. On set, things had been less than rosy even before the scandal broke. Multiple crew members spoke out, some on condition of anonymity, about Blake being difficult or laser-focused on her own agenda rather than the broader vision of the film. Reports swirled that she'd commandeered certain creative decisions, overshadowing Justin Baldoni's authority as the director. Some recounted moments during press events where Blake dismissed meaningful questions about domestic abuse in favor of promoting her own ventures, inadvertently shifting attention away from the real issues central to the movie. While there's nothing inherently wrong with discussing personal projects, critics argued that the timing and context of her self-promotion undermined the serious nature of the film's core message. The shift in public perception was dramatic. Blake had long been lauded for her polished image and philanthropic gestures. She'd participated in charitable initiatives, spoken at women's events, and generally maintained a warm, accessible presence. Yet now, people wondered if that image had always been carefully curated. The notion that she might use a cause as serious as domestic violence primarily to elevate her profile or overshadow others triggered a wave of disillusionment among some fans. Others, still loyal to her, insisted that any critiques were the result of sexist double standards, pointing out how female celebrities are often labeled difficult for simply knowing what they want. As the conflict intensified, Ryan Reynolds' trademark comedic style became more divisive. His quips, usually perceived as harmless and endearing, were now interpreted as barbs meant to belittle or shame Baldoni. The deleted scene from the Deadpool crossover pointed to a more proactive approach, weaving jokes about a real-life feud into a blockbuster franchise. Whether or not that was the actual intent, public debates raged over whether such an approach was insensitive. After all, if Blake's lawsuit was genuinely about harassment and emotional abuse, turning it into fodder for jokes might undermine its gravity. Worse, it could inadvertently signal to fans that the central issues were more about generating headlines than seeking justice. Baldoni supporters seized on that angle, arguing that the comedic references to man buns and feminist standpoints demonstrated the Reynolds Lively team's willingness to trivialize the matter. Every time Ryan cracked a joke at Baldoni's expense, it gave Baldoni's attorney more ammunition to say, "Look, they're not taking these allegations seriously at all." This only reinforced Baldoni's perspective that the entire legal drama was more about controlling the narrative than about real accountability. Some critics even suggested that Ryan's involvement made the case look more like a personal vendetta than a legitimate call-out of professional misconduct. Complicating matters further, the rumored tensions on the set of It Ends With Us ran deeper than just creative control. The film was adapted from an immensely popular novel, bringing with it a built-in fanbase that was fiercely protective of the source material. Many fans worried that Hollywood's typical glitz would overshadow the novel's gritty commentary on abuse. When Blake was cast, initial reactions were mixed. Some saw her as an ideal match for the lead role, while others felt that her polished persona might conflict with the raw nature of the story. The swirling controversies soon overshadowed these creative debates, leaving fans wondering if the film's entire message might be lost in a haze of lawsuits, public spats, and rumors of behind-the-scenes power plays. The swirl of rumor and counter-rumor accelerated. Depending on which source you believed, either Blake was a calculated mastermind who cornered Baldoni into a lawsuit, or Baldoni was an opportunist trying to salvage his reputation by spinning a false narrative about a beloved actress. Adding to the confusion, there were rumblings about how Ryan Reynolds had offered Baldoni money to step away from the project, presumably to keep the negative press to a minimum. Baldoni's refusal to accept such a deal, so the rumors said, only inflamed tensions further. It was a prime example of the labyrinthine politics that define Hollywood, where deals are often made in smoky backrooms or luxurious penthouses, away from the prying eyes of the public. The involvement of the New York Times turned what had been a juicy story into a cultural talking point. Allegations of biased reporting and the selective editing of text messages ignited discussions about media ethics. If Friedman's claims held water and the Times truly did omit emojis or alter context, it would cast a giant shadow over one of the most respected newspapers in the world. On the other hand, if Friedman was merely grasping at straws to defend his client, then the entire fiasco might serve as an example of how sensational lawsuits can be leveraged for publicity. Fans on both sides debated feverishly online, dissecting every new statement and tidbit of evidence. The sense of spectacle was heightened by the fact that all parties involved had significant resources, meaning neither side would back down without a fight. Another curious twist was the question of how the lawsuit against the New York Times would affect the original lawsuit between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni. Legally, these were separate matters, but from a public relations standpoint, they were intertwined. Every new development in one case shaped the narrative in the other, sometimes overshadowing the core issues at play. Were these accusations of sexual harassment credible, or were they part of a carefully orchestrated campaign to distract from negative press? For fans, the inability to get clear answers only heightened the sense of drama. Amid the swirling claims, Friedman and Baldoni repeatedly asserted they had the receipts, thousands of messages, emails, and other documents that would exonerate Baldoni by showcasing the full context of every interaction. The Times, meanwhile, insisted they stood by their reporting, claiming that they had reviewed every piece of evidence meticulously. Observers speculated that a public release of these documents might be imminent, which would provide a rare look into how these controversies truly unfold behind closed doors. There was a certain rubbernecking aspect to it. People who usually had no interest in Hollywood gossip found themselves drawn in by the legal complexities and the promise of shocking reveals. Meanwhile, as filming schedules shifted under the weight of the industry strikes and ongoing drama, the production of It Ends With Us found itself in limbo. According to Baldoni's team, there had been plans to resume filming in January 2024, but the environment had become too toxic for that to happen smoothly. A private meeting in New York at Blake and Ryan's apartment, where Baldoni and a few producers were said to have been confronted, reportedly escalated the tension beyond repair. If those present were hoping for a civil resolution, the rumored shouting match put that possibility to rest. Instead, it became yet another piece of the puzzle, a puzzle whose final picture was increasingly difficult to discern. Ryan Reynolds' comedic reputation became a double-edged sword. Fans who admired him for his self-deprecating humor and light-hearted jabs started to question whether this spat represented a darker side to his wit. Did the jokes about a feminist man bun serve as a comedic coping mechanism? Or were they a deliberate attempt to ridicule Baldoni's public advocacy and style choices? Critics of Ryan argued that if the allegations of harassment were genuine, then mocking the situation, no matter how subtly, was in poor taste. To them, it signaled a brazen dismissal of the gravity of Blake's claims. Meanwhile, supporters of Ryan insisted that the entire fiasco was being blown out of proportion, and that comedic references to man buns were hardly proof of a smear campaign. As the drama wore on, public discourse shifted to question how female stars wield their influence within Hollywood. Some noted that if a high-profile actress like Blake Lively was truly manipulating the press or overshadowing her co-workers, it wouldn't be the first time a prominent celebrity leveraged fame for control. Others countered that the idea of a woman overshadowing a male director revealed a deeply sexist double standard, that a man who took charge would be praised, while a woman doing the same might be condemned. In reality, the swirl of rumor made it almost impossible to form definitive conclusions. Each piece of evidence seemed to raise new questions instead of offering clarity. Much of the controversy hinged on context, which is notoriously elusive in the gossip-driven world of celebrity news. A single text message could be read as playful banter or menacing taunt, depending on which side of the feud you believed. An invitation to collaborate could be seen as an olive branch or as an underhanded attempt to sideline a rival. That ambiguity fueled the drama's longevity. With no definitive timeline for a resolution, the saga became a staple of social media commentary, with hashtags trending every time new details were leaked. The story, in many ways, stopped being about the film or even the lawsuit itself. Instead, it became a study in how celebrity narratives evolve in the digital age, shaped by viral tweets, unauthorized leaks, and cunningly placed sound bites. One of the most talked about moments occurred when Blake was asked at a press conference how she might advise survivors of abuse to reach out to her. Instead of providing meaningful resources or directing people to organizations, she responded with a quip about whether they should ask for her phone number or home address, effectively shutting down a genuine opportunity to spotlight survivors' needs. Those who had championed her portrayal of the film's main character were left shaking their heads. It struck many as a missed chance to demonstrate genuine solidarity with those who had endured real-life traumas. Baldoni's allies seized on this instance as evidence that Blake's apparent focus was not on championing the film's serious subject matter, but on maintaining control of her own image. As the public grew increasingly divided, pockets of fans openly questioned whether Blake's celebrity brand might be crumbling. Once viewed as Hollywood's golden girl, she now faced allegations of narcissism and manipulative behavior. Simultaneously, Ryan's comedic persona was taking a hit as well, with some fans urging him to separate personal humor from potentially serious accusations. The swirling controversies gave people pause. Was it possible that the adored power couple was more invested in their brand's survival than in justice or moral high ground? The layers of irony were thick. Blake's alleged complaint about being fat-shamed clashed with a so-called comedic scene referencing her postpartum body in a mocking manner, fueling the argument that the accusations were not entirely consistent. If Ryan was so protective of Blake's well-being, critics questioned why he would incorporate jokes about body image in any of his projects, even if indirectly. Was it satire gone wrong? or a case of real animosity creeping into cinematic production? The lines between personal and professional life blurred, leaving the public to wonder if the couple's brand of humor had taken a turn for the mean-spirited. Throughout all of this, Justin Baldoni tried to shift the narrative back to the subject matter of It Ends With Us. Domestic abuse and the complexities around survival, heartbreak, and personal growth. Yet every time he attempted to refocus attention on the film's deeper themes, a new detail about the lawsuit or an inflammatory comment from Blake or Ryan surfaced. It became practically impossible to extricate the film's messaging from the drama that now engulfed its production. Film analysts speculated that the controversy might boost ticket sales if it ever saw the light of day, considering that sensationalism often draws crowds. Others argued that the fiasco had so tarnished the project's reputation that no amount of promotional spin could salvage it. As months passed, news outlets published pieces scrutinizing the dynamic of powerful Hollywood couples, how they operate as a unit, and how they sometimes bend entire projects or narratives to their will. The discussion extended beyond Lively and Reynolds to consider other celebrity pairs who have dominated the spotlight, questioning whether the public's fascination with power couples might inadvertently enable them to exert undue influence behind closed doors. If the allegations of manipulative tactics were true, it served as a wake-up call to fans who often place celebrities on pedestals, assuming that a smiling face on a magazine cover translates to benevolence or honesty. Critics also pointed out that we've seen similar story arcs before. The luminous star with philanthropic claims, the supportive spouse, the supposedly benign directorial figure, all colliding in a swirl of conflicting accounts. Hollywood, after all, thrives on spectacle, and a well-timed controversy can sometimes be worth more than a polished press tour. Was this entire saga a cynical ploy to keep the film's name in circulation and harness the unstoppable engine of free publicity that scandal so often provides? Or was it a genuine moral clash, where lines of respect and decency had been trampled in the pursuit of box office success? Fans struggled to remain neutral. Those who admired Blake for her advocacy in other arenas found it challenging to reconcile these allegations with the philanthropic persona she'd carefully built. Simultaneously, fans of Justin Baldoni, many of whom had appreciated his podcast discussions on vulnerability and masculinity, felt betrayed by the possibility that he might be unfairly targeted by larger Hollywood power brokers. And Ryan Reynolds, who had been seen as the amiable jokester, a comedic everyman, now faced accusations of weaponizing his humor. In this environment, objectivity was scarce. Everyone with a Twitter account or a comment section had a theory, a hot take, or a piece of insider info that they were certain revealed the truth. The swirl of rumor even touched on the possibility of other Hollywood heavyweights choosing sides. Some speculated that studios or producers who had good relationships with Ryan and Blake might be hesitant to hire Baldoni for future projects, thus reinforcing the notion that this conflict could have long-term repercussions on his career. Conversely, there were suggestions that by suing a major publication, Baldoni was burning bridges that he might have needed down the line. The drama didn't just pit star against director. It threatened to unravel a complex web of industry connections, alliances, and enmities that shape the entertainment landscape. In the face of all this, the question lingered: what about the accusations of sexual harassment? Were they the product of real experiences that Blake sought to bring to light? Or were they weaponized claims aimed at diverting attention from her own controversies? People who cared deeply about the #MeToo movement worried that the saga might trivialize genuine cases of harassment, turning them into fodder for tabloid sensationalism. Others argued that investigating claims, even when made by celebrities, is a necessary part of dismantling the culture of silence. The difficulty lay in sorting out the truth when each side insisted on its own version of events. As the legal battles ground on, Friedman's statements to the press became more pointed, accusing Ryan and Blake of systematically dismantling Baldoni's reputation and planting stories that framed him as a villain. The attorney dropped hints about a mountain of digital evidence that would, if revealed publicly, dismantle the carefully crafted illusions around the Lively Reynolds brand. These dramatic proclamations only revved up public curiosity. Suddenly, blog sites, gossip channels, and social media detectives were digging through years of interviews, old press photos, and cryptic tweets, searching for any clue that could confirm or deny Friedman's allegations. stories emerged claiming that Blake's publicist had planted negative pieces about Baldoni in the media, reinforcing Friedman's argument that the couple aimed to control the story at every turn. The suggestion was that any news outlet that didn't adhere to the couple's favored storyline risked losing access to future exclusives, interviews, and behind-the-scenes set visits. A daunting prospect in an industry where relationships with top-tier talent are vital for survival. It showcased the potentially precarious balance between journalism and the entertainment machine, where free press is rarely free and behind-the-scenes negotiating can shape entire public narratives. Finally, one of the largest unknowns was how the lawsuits would proceed in court if they ever got that far. Settlement deals often happen behind closed doors, especially in high-profile disputes where both parties have an interest in containing further damage. For some onlookers, a sealed settlement would only fuel suspicions. After all, it wouldn't resolve the question of who was truly at fault. On the other hand, a public trial could become a media circus, with the participants risking even greater exposure of personal details and potential reputational harm. As each day passed without a clear resolution, fans and media alike continued to speculate, fueling the notion that this drama was far from over. And that, perhaps, is where we're left. A tangled web of accusations, denials, strategic media placements, and legal maneuverings, with no definitive endpoint in sight. In a city built on image, illusions, and expertly woven stories, the actual truth can be nearly impossible to determine. Are we witnessing a genuine case of workplace harassment with a powerful actress stepping forward to highlight unacceptable behavior? Or are we observing a carefully orchestrated campaign to sideline a director who might have challenged Blake's aspirations for creative control and stardom? And where does Ryan Reynolds truly fit into all this? Protective spouse, comedic provocateur, or cunning orchestrator of the brand? For Hollywood observers, part of the intrigue lies in how these narratives get shaped and reshaped by each new piece of information that surfaces. Legal documents, text messages, and unguarded comments spill into the public domain, each revealing fragments of what might be happening behind closed doors. The public tries to piece it all together into a coherent timeline, but every new development has the potential to rewrite the entire story. It's the nature of the spectacle. The more you learn, the less certain you become of anything. What remains evident is that the stakes are high for everyone involved. For Blake Lively, there's her professional credibility and personal integrity on the line. For Justin Baldoni, it's a matter of protecting not just his reputation but his livelihood, his very identity as a filmmaker known for compassion and authenticity. For Ryan Reynolds, it's about whether his comedic persona can sustain the backlash of a serious scandal. And for fans watching from the sidelines, it's about discerning genuine battles from orchestrated media spin. Despite the chaotic revelations, one thing is certain: the appetite for this saga shows no sign of dwindling. As more evidence is teased and more statements are issued, the public is left in a perpetual state of "to be continued." And in Hollywood, there's nothing the industry loves more than a good cliffhanger. Except, of course, the chance to cash in on the next installment of the drama. So perhaps we should all settle in, because it appears this conflict is far from its final act. The illusions of the silver screen might fade once the credits roll, but off-screen, the drama marches on, fed by insatiable curiosity and the potent mix of celebrity prestige, legal ramifications, and personal vendettas. Where the story goes from here depends on a swirl of shifting alliances, legal gambits, and PR strategies that can pivot in an instant. In a realm where public perception is currency, every move is calculated for maximum impact. Is it possible that behind the scenes, quiet negotiations are underway, searching for a truce that would bring an end to the lawsuits and the damage being done on both sides? Or is the clash too personal now for any hope of an amicable resolution? Those are the questions fueling countless theories, Twitter threads, and media headlines. For the time being, the audience is left in suspense, waiting for the next revelation or the next court filing, uncertain whether the final chapters will provide closure or merely open a new can of worms. In the grand scheme, this debacle goes far beyond a legal dispute or biting remarks. It illustrates how rapidly Hollywood's power structures can shift, exposing the fragility of even the most celebrated star images. An entertainer's humor, once purely endearing, can suddenly become a sword when real emotions flare. The entire episode calls into question the role of the press, even esteemed platforms, and the tangled realm of curated public personas. Most importantly, it serves as a reality check. Behind every spotless red carpet moment or light-hearted social media post may lurk layers of tension. For a couple revered for their warmth and wit, the reminder that no celebrity is beyond scandal is perhaps the biggest surprise of all.